I'm just going to, waiting for recording. Thank you.
Okay, I plan to talk about sources and a few research ideas at ZSL Library and Archives. Asia is such a large region with many biogeographical areas and ecosystems. It's also very biodiverse. These are just 4 of the animals found here: a Chinese giant salamander, Asian lions, a gharial and a vulture. Right, I'm just going to see if my arrows work. No, they don't. Okay. This is an outline of my talk. I want to introduce you to ZSL, the collections in ZSL Library and Archives, some examples of how the collections have been used, a few ideas for future research, and then finally Christmas, as I'm sure you're all aware, it is approaching very rapidly. To begin, what is ZSL? It's an international conservation charity with a vision of a world where wildlife thrives. Our purpose is to inspire and inform and empower people to stop wild animals going extinct. From this, we've developed purpose statements for the library and archives to enhance and support research and lifelong learning, to celebrate and share ZSL's history and cultural heritage, to inspire and inform new, diverse and existing audiences, to preserve and curate ZSL's organisational memory, and to foster active collaboration. And this is our reading room with a reminder of our overall purpose. ZSL was established by Sir Stamford Raffles with others in 1826. So in a few years, we'll be celebrating our bicentenary. On retiring to Britain, Raffles decided to establish a Zoological Society and wrote a prospectus to attract people, eventually founding a new Zoological Society with zoological gardens, a museum and library. Sadly, Raffles died soon after establishing the society. As our first president, he attended only one meeting of our council, our governing body. Almost from the start, women were admitted as fellows on the same basis as men. Sophia Raffles, Sir Stamford Raffles' widow, was our first woman fellow in 1827. It was highly unusual at the time for learned societies to admit women on the same basis as men. ZSL London Zoo was established in Regent's Park in 1828, followed by over 100 years later by ZSL Whipsnade Zoo, a large site on the Bedfordshire Downs and probably still the largest zoo site in Europe. Science was carried out almost from the start. And now ZSL Science consists of the Institute of Zoology carrying out research in conservation science, science communications, to including engagement, publications, library and archives. And this is a screenshot from our current website. ZSL Conservation and Policy carry out practical projects around the world, working with local communities to conserve their environment and promote sustainability. We work in over 50 countries around the world, and you can see from this map many are in Asia. I thought I would just quickly whiz through some pages on our website showing some of our projects in Asia, from Asian lions and elephants, gibbons, Chinese giant salamander, pangolins, tigers, leopards, gharials, vultures and wildcats. I said gharials, didn't I, and rhinos. I want to emphasise how important information is to conservation science. And this is from one of our meeting brochures a few years ago. Perhaps the single most important element of conservation science is information. Without sufficient information, how can we possibly expect to understand and protect species and habitats? I think it's also important to recognise that unlike in many areas of science, the historical literature in zoology is used as frequently as the current. It's used for checking descriptions of species and anatomical details, for historic distribution and migration data. These are all factors that can change as a result of human impacts, such as climate change. When supporting people working in conservation or with an interest in animal conservation, both historic and modern publications play a role. ZSL's scientific publications started in the 1830s with our proceedings, originally a record of our scientific meetings, and these meetings are still continued today. The proceedings were followed soon after by the transactions containing longer papers. Both are continued today as the Journal of Zoology, which is now online only. As a result of British colonialism and trading activities, information on animals flowed from Asia and from around the world to ZSL, which acted as a hub. Colonial administrators, army officers, ship's captains, missionaries, travellers, traders and collectors sent back specimens and information. Details were mentioned in our scientific meetings and published in our proceedings. Animal specimens were added to the zoo's collections, whilst dead specimens went into our museum or other museums. ZSL acted as a hub for this expanding flow of knowledge. And as an example, I'm using Alfred Russel Wallace and Birds of Paradise. This narrative about obtaining living birds of paradise and their transport to London is published in our proceedings and read at one of our scientific meetings. For many years previously, it was thought that the birds did not have feet and were in constant flight. It was later established that dead specimens had their legs removed before making their way to collectors. This is an image in Gesner depicting the legless birds and a later image in our Reeves collection. As a result of our history, we have extensive archives, the administrative records of ZSL. Here we have one of Wallace's letters. He sent these regularly on his journey to London with the Birds of Paradise. Now here we've got Wallace's receipt for the birds, also in our archives. Once in London, the birds were displayed in the zoo. Another example in our proceedings, dragonflies from northwest India, received from Major Yerbury, described by William Fawcett Kirby and illustrated by Maud Horman Fisher. 3 people known to be involved in this paper, but probably many more were involved. Did Major Yerbury collect the dragonflies himself? Whether local people were involved as collectors or guides? As well as our own publications, we have other relevant runs of periodicals. So here we have a couple of Shelfies as examples. Journal of the Bombay Natural History Society. And, oh, sorry, that was, yeah. And you probably realised I do like Shelfies, so there's quite a few Shelfies in my presentation. And here we've got the Journal of the Bengal Natural History Society. Historic books date back to the mid-16th century. This example is Gesner, the first modern zoology. He tried to describe every known animal species, and some of these were based on travellers' tales. The books take up less than 30 centimetres of shelf space. Just imagine if you tried to do that now, it would more than fill our library. Other books in our special collections, we're particularly fortunate to have many magnificently illustrated books of the 19th century, and this example is John Gould's Birds of Asia. I thought I would highlight a few examples of original material in our collections. Our artworks and manuscripts include those of Brian Horton Hodgson. He was British resident in Nepal who later moved to Darjeeling. He published over 140 zoological papers, and many birds and animals are linked to his name, even a genus of birds, Hodgsonius, the white-bellied redstarts. He paid field workers to observe the Bengal florican, an early study of a bird species in the wild. We have volumes of his handwritten manuscript notes as well as letters in our archives. Some of the drawings are finished, some are drafts, and there's often copious notes including measurements. I know other libraries hold material by Hodgson, including the Natural History Museum and the Royal Asiatic Society. We have 6 volumes on birds and 2 on mammals, approximately 1,500 pages in total. These have been digitised and can be accessed from our library catalogue. We have beautifully handwritten manuscripts of Samuel Richard Tickell, related through marriage to Hodgson. And I thought I'd take this opportunity to compare the 2 pangolin images. The pangolin's the most widely illegally traded mammal. A few more examples from Tickell. For a time, Tickell accompanied Hodgson to Nepal and spent time with the artists working for Hodgson. We have 14 volumes of Tickell's works, again, mainly birds, all beautifully handwritten. I know the Natural History Museum also have some volumes of Tickell's notes. And I should add that our Tickell volumes have been scanned very badly from colour microfiche, but they can still be accessed via our online catalogue, so people in India and Nepal can consult them. John Reeves was a tea inspector in China, and these are some examples from his collection of drawings. There's less context with these, and few of the drawings are annotated. Some have scientific names, and some are inscribed with Chinese characters. Some animals are named for Reeves, such as the Reeves muntjac and the Reeves pheasant. The France Day collection of fishes of India by various artists. We like them so much, we even have fish trail up into the library following some reproductions of the fish drawings. Some of these are named Francis Buchanan Hamilton. I know Isabel and Henry have both mentioned him, but we do have some of his fish drawings as well. Next, I want to highlight some areas of historic research carried out using our collections, which I hope will inspire ideas for future research and collaboration. I mean, you may have some ideas already from my talk so far. David Lowther, who was mentioned by Isabel as well, he's now at the University of Durham, and he carried out some research on Hodgson's collections, and these were published, some of it was published as Patron's Review in Archives of Natural History a couple of years ago. Myself, David and Mark Watson, whose colleague Henry Nolte spoke earlier, researched some Tibetan mastiffs presented 2 times to ZSL, first by Nathaniel Wallach, who then took them back and presented them to the King, and later the King presented them back to ZSL. Edward Dickinson has published about many of the birds in Hodgson's collections at ZSL and the Natural History Museum. Anne Darter has researched the birds of paradise in the Reeves collection, publishing Archives of Natural History and writing a blog for us. Dan Phillips at Exeter University is currently carrying out research on imperial networking at ZSL, primarily focusing on links with India. This is a photo of Dan going through boxes of correspondence of Philip Lutley Slater, who was ZSL's secretary for 42 years, from 1859 to 1902. Although there's lots of potential within our collections, I thought I would suggest a few ideas for further research and possible collaboration. There's still much to be researched in the Hodgson collections. Maybe also with other libraries who have papers by Hodgson. The mammal drawings are by Rajman Singh, but we don't know whether he also did the drawings of birds. Only a small sample of the Devanagari script has been translated. Is it worth translating more? Is it repeated in English already? This painting of the endangered shrew or Tibetan unicorn has some Devanagari text on the back, and this has been translated as "The deer is roaming in the king's jungle." Sorry, you can tell I'm a librarian. I'm saying jungle instead a journal instead of jungle. As we were going through the archives, we've encountered some uncatalogued manuscripts of Hodgson, not previously examined, plus some by Tickell. These are reptiles in this Tickell volume, as well as fish. The volume has a mysterious note saying sent to the Royal Geographical Society in 1853. And this is my one botanical illustration in my whole presentation. The drawings are not only zoology and botany, there's other material in there as well. Oops. We have drawings of Karachi fish and crustaceans by unknown artists, 122 art originals, probably made 1845 to 55. More research could be carried out on the John Reeves collection. There's been some collaboration over his collections of botanical drawings, plus Judith McGee has published a book on the drawings at the Natural History Museum, including the zoological drawings. However, our drawings have not been looked at, along with others. Researchers have looked at particular species, such as Anne Darter looking at birds of paradise. And currently some of the reptile drawings have been examined, but this is just a few of the something like 130 drawings. We're only just beginning to look at the collections in terms of colonial and imperial networking. I mentioned already Dan's research, and a student at Oxford, Max Spoke, studied the collecting of Alfred Russel Wallace and Evelyn Cheeseman as part of his dissertation, looking at their relation to and dependence on local people who were largely uncredited or even exploited. Increasingly, the contributions of Wallace's assistant, Ali, are now being researched and recognised, but there's so many unseen and unknown contributors who are not credited. Russel Wallace was in the Malay archipelago for 8 years, from 1854, whilst Evelyn Cheeseman, a former insect curator at ZSL, conducted 8 expeditions in New Guinea, the New Hebrides and the South Seas from 1925 to 1955. As I said previously, our publications depended on the colonial networks for descriptions of animal specimens. There must be more potential for further research. So often the people supplying the information are credited, but they're at the end of the chain. Others who often did the collecting and supplied information about the animals and where they could be found are uncredited. This is a form of exploitation which we would like to address if possible, so these people can be credited in the future. These are just a few suggestions. There's a huge potential for further research using our collections. So if I've inspired you and you'd like to find out more, the first place to look is probably our library catalogues. The library catalogue includes books, journals and artworks. There are also scans of the Hodgson and Tickell manuscripts within the catalogue. Our archives catalogue, launched this year, contains details of our administrative records and details of items such as correspondence. We have a series of blogs on the website, but we're not currently adding blogs as we're in the process of changing websites, but we should resume again next year. And here we have a blog about the letters of Philip Lutley Slater, who was secretary for such a long time and corresponded with so many people during the 42 years he was secretary. And a reminder of our purpose: to inspire, inform and empower people to stop wild animals going extinct. So I'm hoping you're feeling both inspired and informed, and maybe empowered to carry out some research or refer others on to us. We're of course keen to collaborate with other collections when we can. I'd like to introduce our team. Natasha, our archivist, Emma, who's our deputy librarian, and you already know me now. I'd like to thank them both for giving me the time to attend this meeting and to work on this presentation. As a very small team with 2 of us working part-time, it is really lovely to be able to talk to other people about our wonderful collections. We are currently open Tuesdays and Wednesdays only, 10:30 till 5. Please encourage people to visit and to make an appointment in advance. We are closing for Christmas, and the last day we're open is Wednesday, 14th of December, and then reopening Tuesday, 3rd of January. Do follow us on Twitter at ZSL Library, and we'll be doing some 12 days of Christmas tweets from 20th of December. Previous years, we've done 12 days of Gould Mass, featuring Birds and John Gould's books. Christmas, highlighting crustaceans. And last year, it was Crocmas, featuring crocodilians. It was great fun, and it was a brilliant way to showcase some of our special collections. So this year, our theme will be revealed on 20th of December. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Anne. That's a really charming presentation, particularly the images of the animals in the collection. So thank you very much indeed. I particularly appreciated how you were able to illustrate the relevance of historic collections to current conservation priorities. And once again, the connections between your holdings and those of many other institutions in the UK and overseas. I have just a general question about digitisation. Have you been able to digitise? You mentioned digitisation in the Hodgson collection, but how many of the art collections digitised and available online?
Many of the artworks, when you look at the record in the catalogue, there is a thumbnail image, and we've done many of the individual artworks. And then when it's something that's been catalogued at the collection level, such as the Reeves collection, we've just added a few images. When it comes to Kell and Hodgson, we have actually scanned those, and those are in the catalogue records. But we've been focusing on cataloguing what we have rather than digitising. But obviously that's something we've got to, we've got to step up and do more, really.
Oh, well, it's very time consuming and expensive work, but I hope that as it continues to happen gradually, it does, you will of course find out lots more about the collections, particularly the Devanagari inscriptions.
I mean, the major thing for us this year is actually managing to get our new archives catalogue launched, which has been a huge amount of work for us. But we now need to continue to develop that, and certainly digitisation is something that we're looking at.
Well, congratulations on the launch of the new archives catalogue.
Thank you.
We have a question in the Q&A. I don't know if you can see it, Anne. Thank you for the wonderful talk. In my research, I'm currently translating Japanese zoological works from the Edo period based on Chinese encyclopedias such as the Benchao Ganglu. Is this kind of research also of interest for the ZSL?
Yes, it would be. I'm not sure if we have anything that would be relevant in our collections? I can't think, nothing immediately jumps to mind. Can I ask you to email me and I can reply more fully?
May I ask again, you were talking about the mission of ZSL today. How does that relate to the original mission? Well,
originally, it was a mix of things. It was to have like a stamp collection of animals for people to be able, for our fellows, our members, to come and see and study. But there was also a scientific mission to have specimens in a museum. And, you know, often the animals, when they died in the zoos themselves, they would then be dissected. The information would then be published in probably in the transactions, and then the specimen would go into our museum. And we no longer have a museum. It was disbanded in something like 1862, and specimens were offered to the British Museum, and the ones that they didn't want were then offered to museums around the country. So it was quite different.
Thank you. I don't know if there are any other questions for Anne while we have her with us. It's okay if not. We'll still have one more opportunity this afternoon to ask more questions. But thank you so much, Anne, for this really enjoyable presentation.